Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Remember to subscribe to our free podcast so you won't miss any of our inspiring content. Here is episode number 126.
I want people to understand that impacting others isn't about glory. It's about making a difference. And that it's about how you feel about the difference that you're making.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Amy House. Amy is a marketing and business development executive with over 25 plus years of nonprofit management. Before becoming a full-time entrepreneur and business owner, Amy has worked for causes such as foster, adoption, indigent drug and alcohol counseling, kidney disease, and advocate for transplant patients, as well as the arts and culture organization. Currently, Amy is focused on building her e-commerce business, supporting her business team, and giving to the business community by hosting motivational networking events. Amy's entire career has been helping others, and she sees her current business initiatives as just another tool to make a difference in her community and world. Welcome, Amy.
Well, thank you. And it was my goal to give you as many big words as possible.
A lot of tongue twisters in there, so it's just not working right for me, but that's okay. We'll have a great interview anyway. So do you want to briefly tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am a wife and mother. I have 6 adult children. So I am currently an empty nester, but I know what the world is like when all of your kids are still at home and you're trying to figure out your journey and your role in life and raise them too. Currently have 11 grandchildren. We've instructed the last 2 kiddos that they can take their time in procreating. That would be okay with us. And that's kind of my background a little bit. Hobbies, those would be gardening. That was kind of a twofold hobby. One, we had 6 kids to feed. It was a great way to kind of accent the budget a little bit. But it was also kind of that moment of peace. The kids never wanted to help in the garden. So it was kind of that place I could go and get away and think. And so gardening became one of my passions. I am a huge reader, so if it has words on it, I'm probably reading it. Family used to laugh that we couldn't even leave like the cereal box on the table. Mom was tuned out; she was reading the box. So that was kind of how things go. So those are probably my 2 biggest hobbies and passions along the way. That's a little bit about me.
Well, great. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you to discover what you love to do, maybe what you're doing now or working with others.
Absolutely. So back in the day, back in high school, originally the plan was I was going to go to college and become an attorney. And I think the reason the journey started there was my parents saw I did have a passion for reading and I had a passion for debate. I enjoyed history and they thought that was a great fit. Plus, I think parents in general look at career opportunities and want to push their children towards things that they think will be resource-driven professions that are going to make a living or provide their child with a great living. And so my family was pushing for me being an attorney. And I actually got my undergraduate degree in psychology, and the thought was I was going to be able to pick great juries. I was going to understand the psychology of juries and be a great litigator. But I took a class that was transforming. It was a class about helping children give interviews in court. It was basically forensic interviewing techniques. And it opened up to me the world of children that had been abused, children that had had crimes committed against them or they had witnessed a crime. And I really thought, that's what I want to do. I want to help people. Yes, I could probably help people in a court of law, but I really want to help people in in a more tangible way. And that was my first real exposure to what that could look like. So I actually got my master's degree in counseling, switched from law to counseling, and went into private practice. That was wonderful, except had a real life-changing moment in that I had a client who tried to kill his wife in my office.
Wow.
So that was the moment of, I don't know that I want to do it this way. I don't know that this is the medium through which I want to make a difference in the world. I still want to make a difference in the world, but maybe this is not the direction. And it's kind of interesting. Sometimes you don't listen to your internal clock or your internal voice telling you things, and sometimes it takes an external thing happening for you to really take that moment. So I think that was another transition point in my life. Went into nonprofit management because I thought, hey, I understand business, I understand the social services part of things. That's my education and background now, and I can make a difference. And had a wonderful opportunity to work with a variety of different charities and organizations with different causes, all of which were making huge strides and differences in the world. Yeah. And then as my last child left home, I could really do now what I really want to do. And so what is it I really want to do? Am I helping people in the way that I think makes the biggest difference? And while I still believe in the nonprofit community, and I volunteer with several nonprofits in my own community, the thing that kept coming up for me is I want to be this anonymous donor that impacts people that have fallen through the cracks. Wow. That there are a ton of people that they have a need, that if that one need were met, it would change their lives, it would reset their course, and they don't necessarily qualify for social services programs. So those could be people like the mom who takes her car in to get repaired, and the technician's telling her this is how much it's going to cost, and her next thing is, well, I can't get all of that fixed. What's the most important thing? Wow. And what's the least expensive thing? And you know that mom needs that car. She needs that car to get to work. She needs that car to go to school. She needs that car, whatever. What if you were the person who could just walk into any car repair place and write a check and say, hey, don't let her know who paid for this, but go ahead and fix everything.
Wow. So tell us a little bit more. I mean, what an amazing story, working with people. I mean, you sound like you're a paradigm changer, that you really help make a difference in people's lives like that. What do you feel like was the inspiration behind that, other than just asking your question of what you want to do now?
I think as you kind of progress along your journey, questions start happening to you that you have to answer, that you have to take time to answer. And one of the things that became very obvious to me in the nonprofit world were the people that didn't qualify for help, number one, because they were just on that borderline of what the qualifications were for whatever nonprofit I was working for. Or number two, they were people that would never ask for help.
Yeah.
They needed the help, but they wouldn't ask for the help. It was not in their nature to look for anybody. They thought it was their duty, their responsibility to make their own lives happen, and it is. But what if you're the power in the universe that's supposed to be that little perk, that little help along the way that they're not expecting? What if you're that?
Wow.
And that's a powerful place to be. But you don't need the recognition for it. For me, it's not about, I need to be recognized by a nonprofit as a huge donor. I don't need to be recognized as a mover and shaker. What if you're a mover and shaker behind the scenes and you just know you've impacted someone, but they never need to know it was you?
Yeah. Modern day Santa Claus. Yeah.
That's right. And you just kind of walk away. It's such a great feeling. And you just know that afternoon when she goes to pick up her car from the car repair place and they say, oh, by the way, everything's fixed and you don't owe anything, she's probably, standing there going, what? What just happened? But it then empowers her. Yeah. Because good things can happen to you. And what if you then become the pay it forward person? So at some point, just being the instigator for someone else of positive things in their life and encouragement, but not having them need to know you is kind of a big place to be. So when we started looking at business opportunities that would allow us to build a business to create those resources, we could even kind of guide that step. We wanted a business that allowed us to travel. Our grandchildren live all over the country, and so not being tied to a business that was in a brick and mortar business was important to us. It was important that we could pick and choose how we worked. If we wanted to sleep in, we could. If we wanted to work late at night, we could. You know, it was, we were just getting to that stage of life of we wanted to define things by how we wanted life to be, not by what society calls work and not necessarily by work hours. So we've kind of gone through this transition, my husband and I, in our careers where we haven't bought into what society might tell you is success, and we don't evaluate our success on the same terms, and we don't feel like we're here to necessarily live this glamorous lifestyle. It's really about impacting other people. That's what gives us fulfillment. And I think as you travel through your journey, what really lights you up becomes obvious, even if it's not culturally the norm. Maybe you need to listen to it.
Wow. Wow, how powerful. I'm feeling really inspired by what you're saying. Do you want to tell us, like, some of the challenges that you've had along the way and what you've learned from that, kind of getting yourself to this situation?
Sure. I think the first one was probably back in college when I informed my parents I wasn't going to go to law school. That was probably the first real moment of truth there. But you know, I think along the way, it was even the moment that I let my last employer, my last true 9-to-5 kind of job, let them know that I was quitting to work my e-commerce business full time. And they're like, but that's not really a job. And I'm like, well, it is to me.
Were you scared to do that too? I mean, that does take a lot of courage to go, you know.
It does, and we made some life changes to make that happen. I mean, you know, when you have 6 kids, you obviously have a home that accommodates 6 kids.
Yeah.
So we downsized our home. We streamlined life. I mean, when you make those choices to make true life transitions, you have to sometimes be willing to look at every aspect of your life and go, I need to make an adjustment here. Or is this really what I want to do? Do I want to clean a big house all the time? What kind of home do we need now? And really kind of instead of the world tells you need this big glamorous home, maybe you need just a home that meets your needs.
Wow.
Going through that.
Yeah. It sounds like it caused you to do a lot of evaluation on maybe what's important to you. That's wonderful. So tell me, you know, we kind of discussed it or in a roundabout way, but how do you feel like your paradigm has changed over time and with all your experience that you have?
So even when you look at the beginning of my career and along the way, it took a long time for me to realize that titles in jobs were not an indicator of success. I think a lot of people still buy into if I've got director or manager or executive or chief whatever officer in my title, I have hit the big time. In the reality, those people are working 2 to 3 times as hard for maybe $3,000-$4,000 more.
Yeah.
In most cases, they're not really doubling or tripling their income with these titles. The title themselves don't give you success. And for the longest time, I evaluated whether I was successful by the title that was on my business card.
Yeah. Sometimes that title can be handcuffs too, you know.
That's right. That's right. And so by changing how, I think my paradigm shift happened probably about 5 years ago when I evaluated that life wasn't about my title. It was about, was I satisfied? Yeah. Was I happy? And did I really feel fulfilled? And a lot of times looking back at jobs with great titles, I was not so much fulfilled as I was stressed out.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that life is supposed to be stressed out. I think life is supposed to be fulfilling, but sometimes we have to really separate ourselves from what we've been told to what we know in our hearts what it should be.
Yeah, I think far too many of us are walking around unhappy and not really even realizing it. We're trying to basically fulfill somebody else's dream, of what they think happiness is or whatever.
Right. And I think every time I could go call my parents and say, I've been promoted again, here's my new title, somehow I felt like I was justifying to them my journey. And I've gotten to the point I don't have to justify my title to anyone. I can make up any title, but it's really not about the title. It's, do I get up every day and I feel like I end every day making some sort of progress forward personally or professionally? And that was really what it kind of came down to.
Wow. I want to hear more about your e-commerce business and the services that you offer. You talk a little bit. I mean, how does that all happen of helping that single mom, pay that mechanic?
Yeah, so basically my e-commerce business, I partnered with the dermatologist that created the Proactive line. They created a secondary skincare line called Rodan & Fields, and it was one of the first products that was originally in brick and mortar and pulled out to go almost fully e-commerce. And it's marketed solely on social media. So using my experience with Facebook marketing and those kind of things for nonprofits, it was kind of an easy business to start just by sharing information and using social media as an education tool. And because social media has a huge reach, both nationally and internationally, I could reach clients anywhere and they could message me through Facebook and basically purchase my product. And that's how I built my business. But what I found along the way was that I was meeting all these people all over the country, in Canada, in Australia, every place that we would open business, I would get to meet these people and then ultimately find out what they did and what were their goals and how could I impact them. And along the way began to realize I could do training. I could do motivational speaking. I could connect people here and there and yon and help them build their businesses. So kind of the whole networking piece of what I do, not just an e-commerce business, it's really more of a people-to-people business. I had the opportunity this week to, I guess you could call it meet a lady on Skype who's in Canada, and we were talking about her business, and she has a unique service, and I've never run into anybody in Idaho that has that service, and we were talking about who she could meet in the Idaho area and expand into the United States. So just because my business is a skincare product for people with some significant dermatological issues, I've turned my business into something else. So I think you constantly have to be open that no matter what your quote-unquote business that brings in your money is, you have probably a bigger purpose than that.
Yeah, being open, like you said, I love that, being that teachable person, that's willing to reevaluate things, move maybe where you're intended to be, not where you're, told to be. So that's great. Right. And we talked about success before, and what that means to you is kind of different than maybe what somebody else would think. I mean, what are the things that you're most proud of where you feel successful?
It is a great feeling when your business makes money and you're profitable. But I think it's even a bigger impact when you take those resources and you make the impact go further. So for me, it's not just what's coming in each month. It's now kind of brainstorming, even with my husband, where do we want the money to go and who can we help and how do we make that happen without making it a big deal. So for me, it's not necessarily living in a big, glamorous home. Our home is fairly modest in a middle-class neighborhood. It's more utilizing those resources in a different way that the feel-good factor lasts a lot longer than saying just me going and buying a new pair of shoes, which, don't get me wrong, I love to do. But, the feel-good factor for a new pair of shoes is about a week. A feel-good factor when you help someone else and you've walked away and you really know it impacted their life. That lasts much longer.
Wow. Yeah, that is true. So, I mean, what you're basically saying is that you use your business more as a means of helping other people. When we were talking about the single mom pay the mechanic, it's not that you go out necessarily having a business where you do that, but your business helps you do that. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay, great.
That is correct.
Before we go on, let's listen to this message. Okay, fire starters, we are halfway through our anniversary month. We are so grateful for all of our contributors, listeners, and support that we've received over the last year. So we're halfway through our month-long celebration. We're doing weekly drawings for subscribers. To enter the drawing, go to YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, or any mobile podcasting subscriber service. Subscribe to the free podcast, leave us a review, and or comment on your favorite podcast. Also, another way that you could enter is to share our content with your friends. 5-star review. There's so many ways that you could be part of this drawing. Then email us a copy of that review or tell us what you did at contact@theluminousmind.net. This is very important because I don't always know what you have done. Once you email us, your name will be entered to win fabulous prizes that past Firestarter contributors have graciously donated to our anniversary. The drawings take place each Saturday, and we post them on our social media sites. Winners receive an email after the drawing. To check out the prizes, please go to our website, theluminousmind.net. Under the subscribe tab, there is a giveaway tab that gives you all that information and also shows you how to write a review if you're interested. Thank you for helping us to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education. Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with Amy House. We talked about with your business, you do hosting and of motivational speaking and some networking events. Kind of go into that and tell us a little bit more. Give us some ideas of what those events look like.
So originally when I started kind of putting groups together, there were groups that were existing, and it was about kind of going into those and then getting asked to speak. And I've spoken on a variety of topics like what do fairy tales have to teach us about business, and did a whole series on what did Snow White teach us, what can Cinderella teach us about business, what did Rapunzel teach us about business, which is fun because men typically, if you say I'm going to talk about Rapunzel, they might turn off. But ultimately, it's really kind of fun when you see them perk up and they're like, that story does teach us that. I've had people message me through email going, I did the Snow White clothes today and it worked. I'm like, I know what you're talking about. That's great. So it started out there. And then I began to realize that there were groups of people that just by the nature of their job, while they needed the connections with others, they didn't have the freedom in their job to make that happen. So it began small by creating some small get-togethers, glass of wine, a coffee shop, whatever, and those people were kind of selectively invited, knowing that they could make connections with each other for business that would help each other. But then it kind of grew from there. And so now I travel to some local towns around the Boise, Idaho area and host what I call girlfriends lunches. And basically they're business lunches for women in business, whether they're owning their own business or whether they're leading a business. But I say, we're not getting together to talk about business. We're getting together to laugh. We're getting together to know each other and to whatever you need to do. And we're going to eat a great lunch. At the end of the lunch, if you've made a connection with someone, great, follow up with them. But really what this lunch is about is that we're going to meet each other as people first, not just what we do for business.
Yeah.
And we've grown a couple of those in the surrounding towns around us. And I think that has impact because I think a lot of times we think to do business with each other, we just get in there and we hard hit. This is what I need from you. This is what I do. This is what I sell. And I need you to buy. By doing it this way, women especially have to build trust with each other to do business. And they realize they're a lot more alike than they are different, even if they're in different fields. And there's a different way that they go about doing business then. And so helping some of those groups of businesses or maybe fields of business that don't do traditional networking, but doing it in a different way, kind of what I've been doing along the way.
Yeah, that social connecting or networking, sometimes that's good for your whole soul, basically, of
right.
being
That's
able
right.
to, fill that empty gap that we have there. So that sounds wonderful.
That's right.
Yeah. So tell us, like with mentoring and kind of being that networking connector, do you have any mentors that maybe have made a significant difference in your success, or what have you learned from mentoring others?
I think the biggest mentor that I ever had, and he probably is not aware that he was a mentor, was my dad. He was a senior executive with a major corporation and passed away suddenly 9 years ago. But the company held memorial service for him. And in holding that memorial service, people got up and talked about that every day they would get this email from Mark. And it was Motivations by Mark. And it would be anything from, today I just want you to smile at a customer, to something from the Bible, to something he had read, to something funny my brother and I had done. But it was these motivations from Mark, and that they looked forward every day to getting this email, that it was how they started their day.
Wow.
Come to find out, my dad had pre-written a year's worth of these motivations by Mark. And so literally for a year after he passed away, the company still let his email roll out.
Oh, that's
and they were all
awesome.
pre-scheduled. So I realized that it wasn't necessarily the big things you say to people that make the difference. Sometimes it's the little things. It's today I just want you to smile. That's all I want you to do. Just smile at a customer today. Or today it's, I want you to notice something funny about your kids. You know, it was those little take life back moments that I think sometimes mentors make us aware of. We lose sight of those moments because we're just in a hurry. And so I think that taught me that it wasn't the big aha moments for people. Sometimes it was the little moments for people that made the biggest difference. So he was probably my biggest mentor, and now he's passed away, so I can't even tell him that made a huge difference in how I worked with staff or worked with my sales team or even worked with other business professionals. But it really has made a difference. Today, probably an example for me of how I mentor, had an opportunity to meet with one of my sales team this morning, and she made the comment that she just fizzled, that she just can't light it up, and she just can't get it going, that she's just a fizzler. And I said, wow, what an interesting word. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, say that again, and I want you to hear yourself say what you just said to me. And she said it again, and she said, I really said that out loud, didn't I? I'm like, you just sat here and told me you can't sparkle, you just fizzle.
Oh, gosh.
And I said, is that really how you see yourself? And she sat there and she goes, that kind of makes me mad that I said that about myself. And I'm like,
self-defeating language,
That's right. And I said, so I think sometimes as a mentor, your job is to listen and to help them hear themselves. Because ultimately, I think people are on their own journey and they can get where they need to go. But maybe you need to make them aware of where they're at on their journey, what they're saying to themselves, and they'll redirect.
That's the power of mentoring, right? That they help us find our mission and make us focus on the things that really matter.
Just that one word for her, and I'm like, really? That's how you see yourself? Say it again. Say it out loud again. And she's like, no. And I'm like, well, that's what you said. It came out of your mouth. It's somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And she's like, and so we kind of had that moment, and I think it kind of shook her up that I don't want to believe that about myself. That's not how I see myself. And I think sometimes that's the role of the mentor, is just you're the wall that throws it back at them and go, really, that's what you see? Is that really what you want to see? So that's mentoring to me.
Yeah. Sometimes we think of a mentor as somebody who's maybe smarter or, better at something, but really it just comes down, like you said, I like the idea of thinking as a wall, that you can, it's or a mirror maybe that you can see yourself in better. That's great. So as far as educating yourself and being able to really learn and to grow that way, do you have any books that maybe you've read that you feel like have been really influential in helping you kind of come to your mission a little quicker, maybe?
Absolutely. So there were probably 3 that really helped, especially at the beginning. One was called You Are a Badass, How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life by Jen Sincero. And I loved her irreverence. She uses a colorful language, but she makes you stop and think, do I think that way? Is that how I see myself? And I think that's powerful. One was The Slight Edge with Jeff Olson. I think in a world that teaches you have to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week to be successful and productive, the whole concept of just doing one small thing better might make a huge difference in your productivity. It's not about needing 10 more hours in the day. It may just be tweaking something you're doing to make it slightly more powerful.
Focusing.
And that was huge. And then the last one was, people always laugh when I say this one, but it was called The Way of the SEAL, Think Like an Elite Warrior to Lead and Succeed by Mark Devine. It was interesting to understand how this Navy SEAL culture worked and how they viewed missions and how they viewed obstacles and how they overcome what seems like huge, nobody else would take on those missions kind of thing. And sometimes I think as you change your paradigm and you change your journey, the mission seems really big and it seems almost like it's not something you can achieve. So to have that kind of perspective from how the SEALs think through things was very eye-opening. It allowed me, as we really moved into entrepreneurialism, to kind of put obstacles or challenges in a new perspective. So
that's great. Those sound wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So besides being a voracious reader, what other personal habits do you have that you feel like have been really helpful to you?
I journal, and it took me a long time to learn what journaling really was. I always thought you had to sit down and just have these long, flowing things to say in a beautiful leather-bound book. And really, the way I do journaling is probably a little bit different. I don't journal more than 10 minutes a day. I usually journal while I'm listening to a podcast or something someone has said. But it's more like bullet points for me than it's this long flowing narrative of what's going on in my life and what I think about it. It's really more about PowerPoint bullet points that I need to use that day to focus. But I do that because it kind of clears the slate a little bit and really kind of hones back in the priorities of the day and kind of go from there. So journaling is great for me. And
doing the bullet point thing, does it allow you, like when you do bullet points, does it allow you to pull that information back out? Sometimes if you have a long, drawn-out thing, you're less likely to read it. Do you feel like you can utilize it a little more?
So there are times that, when you go back and you review your own writing, things pop out at you in a different way when they're in bullet point form. What originally was probably the thing you were thinking about from that bullet point changes about every 3 to 6 months.
Wow.
And so it's even kind of a way of going back and going, that thought was powerful to me, but it's changed now. It's still powerful, but now this is what I think about that thought.
So tell us, what do you feel like some of your long-term goals are going to be?
So probably my next big challenge in my personal life is traveling. We have a long bucket list of places we want to see and things we want to do. So that will be part of the next few years of our business, really while we're still relatively young and not worried about breaking a hip, those kind of things, because we are grandparents and we have to think about that. So that's going to be part of it. And I think at some point, kind of my view of how you're supposed to help people. I think because there's a traditional nonprofit charitable cause kind of way of helping people, I think I will probably have to create something for myself that redefines that maybe exists long after I'm gone. Because I think the impact I want to have is not just during my lifetime. I want some piece of what I'm building keep going and helping others along the way.
Yeah, kind of like your dad's.
Yeah.
You know, well, and how much
Because,
more powerful were those little messages that went out, those pre-done messages after he was gone? How much more powerful were they to people?
I still, to this day, on certain, I guess, anniversaries of his death or his birthday or whatever, I still get messages from people he worked with, people that have now moved on to other companies or corporations, but they've connected with me through Facebook, and they've continued to send me messages of, I remember when your dad said this, or I printed off all those emails and I kept them in a binder and I go back and read them. And I'm like, that's the kind of impact you want to have on people, that 9 years later, he still had a message for them and he left a mark on them. Whether he ever knew in his lifetime that he did, that's what ultimately I would like to leave behind.
That is great. Well, and I feel really silly asking you this question after. I feel like the whole conversation that we had has been about how your legacy is being built, but why don't you bullet point that for us of what you really hope people remember you for?
Okay. I hope that they remember that I ultimately believe that every human can make significant changes, and that I was an encourager of change, and that change in my book is always positive. It very rarely is long-term negative. And so I want to be a change agent, and I would like my legacy to be that. I think I want people to understand that impacting others isn't about glory. It's about making a difference, and that it's about how you feel about the difference that you're making. And so whether that's $25 to buy children's school supplies, that's an impact, or whether that's paying a $2,000 automobile repair bill, it's still the same impact. And so whatever it is, my hope is that I teach people to make that kind of an impact for each other, because that's really how you build a better world. That would be my legacy.
That's great. Well, and to kind of go with that, give us your final parting words for our listeners, and then give us your contact information. Maybe if somebody wants to attend one of your events or have you speak or something, how do they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So my parting advice would be this. If it's in your head, you need to listen to it. If it's a vision you have for your life, and it has been kind of that, you've played around with it in your mind, really take a look at that. I don't believe that we're given visions we don't have the skills to achieve, or that we can't achieve. And just because your vision does not fit in with society's traditional view of business or life's journey, you still need to pay attention to that vision. So that ultimately, I think, will lead people to where they need to be and create the happiness that I think we all want to have.
Yeah.
So that would be my parting advice.
Yeah, dreams are meant to be lived, right? Dreams are meant to be lived.
That's right. It doesn't matter how big or small. We all have dreams, and you need to pay attention to them. Otherwise, it would be a very sad day that your life is over and you didn't go for your dream. And what could your dream do for everyone else around you? And because you didn't pursue it, what did they miss out on?
Exactly. So go ahead and give us your contact information then.
Absolutely. So easiest way to reach me is probably by email, and my email is powerhouseamy@gmail.com. And I do respond to email. I check my spam folder too, so I usually don't miss anybody. And then they can also connect with me on Facebook. My name is Amy Shadelhouse. It's a hyphenated name, so they can find me there. But those are probably the two easiest ways to reach me.
Great. And we will connect those on our show notes page. So please check that out and contact Amy. What a powerful, inspiring podcast that we did. So thank you so much for joining us. I've been really inspired by you.
Well, excellent. I appreciate it, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Amy House, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list and get our new monthly newsletter. Then check out our services tab to see how we can continue to assist you, our fire starters. Also, to help us continue production of inspiring content, go to the Sponsor tab at theluminousmind.net for more information on sponsorship and affiliate programs. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, and now Pinterest. Get our free audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider these easy ways. Tell your friends about us, leave us a review, share our content, tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.